Over the course of the last 2 talks, I covered what assertiveness is and is not, why it is important, as well as how you can get started on being assertive. In today's talk, I will go over some more tips and strategies to help you be more assertive and do so even if you're not used to speaking up for yourself, and even if the idea of being assertive makes you nervous. Stay tuned to learn more. Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Growth Philosophy Podcast, a bite-sized weekly podcast focused on empowering you to think better and upgrade your life. So let's talk about assertiveness. Assertiveness, without a doubt, is a very important behavioral skill for many reasons. In my last 2 talks, I covered what being assertive means, what it looks like in real-life situations, as well as why it is important and beneficial for you and others. If you have not listened to those talks, check them out, as they will lay an essential foundation and make it easier for you to adopt this behavior. So listen to those talks if you haven't already. Now let's look at 15 more tips and strategies that can help you be more assertive. These can help you become more assertive even if the idea of being assertive makes you uneasy or nervous. Let's begin. Tip number 1. Understand and be clear about your boundaries. If you are unclear about your own boundaries, it will be hard for you to be assertive, which in turn can be a constant source of frustration and unhappiness. At the end of the day, if you are not aware of your own boundaries, how will anyone else? This alone makes this a vital point to remember, and something you need to do as soon as possible. But how do you realize what your boundaries are? It won't happen overnight, as often the limits of what is and is not acceptable to us becomes clear as we grow older. That said, think about things that bother you, especially things that bother you repeatedly. Those are very likely things that breach your boundaries and violate your needs and wants. Once you have this clarity, it will become easier for you to be more assertive. In the last talk, I talked about getting clarity on your values and priorities, and those will go a long way in helping you understand and get clarity about your own boundaries. They will also help you become aware of what actions, situations, and behaviors aren't acceptable to you. This sort of brainstorming alone can be very useful, but you can go a step further and brainstorm not just what, but also why something bothers you. So don't just think about what bothers you, but also think about why. Getting information on why something bothers you can give you an even clearer idea and a better insight on the matter, which in turn will make you better at dealing with things that frustrate you or make you unhappy. So that's the first one. Get clear about your boundaries. Tip number 2. Write down why you need to be assertive about the matter at hand. Here is an easy rule of thumb for you to decide if you need to be assertive about something. That it bothers you. Simple. If something bothers you, then clearly it is something that you need to deal with. If a situation bothers you or frustrates you, then it is definitely something you need to be addressed. Writing down why the situation is something you need to deal with and be assertive about can be a very useful way to get clarity about the matter, and can even help you realize that being assertive is better than just letting the situation continue. If there's a situation in your life right now that is bothering you, write about it in as much detail as possible, including why it bothers you and which of your needs and wants it perhaps violates or does not meet. Tip number 3. Plan your response ahead of time. Even though moments when you need to be assertive often happen without any notice, there are times when you can plan for it ahead of time. For instance, you can plan in advance how to define your boundaries with a friend or colleague who has a tendency to violate your boundaries. When you plan what you will say and how you will deal with the situation in advance, it gets rid of that uncertainty that often creates confusion and can get in the way of being assertive. Gets rid of some of that nervousness. Planning how you will deal with them and stand up for yourself in advance can go a long way in helping you become more assertive and do so effectively, especially if being assertive is something that you struggle with. Tip number 4. Rehearse with someone. This follows on from the last tip and goes hand in hand with planning your response in advance. You can take your advanced planning to the next stage by rehearsing what you will say. This strategy can be very useful if the matter you want to be assertive about is an important one. Rehearsing with a friend can give you a real taste for how you can say what you want to say, and can even give you an additional morale boost, since your friend being there and being supportive will help you feel more confident about what you plan to say. Rehearsing with someone can also help you notice any issues with the way you're planning to deal with things and minimize the possibility of saying the wrong thing. Rehearsing this with a friend or family member will work best, but you can rehearse with pretty much anyone for that matter, as the interaction alone can be a great way to boost your confidence and comfort level in being assertive when you need and want to be. That said, if you don't have someone to rehearse with, you can always practice in front of a mirror. You can't get any third-party feedback that way, but it can still be helpful. Tip number 5. Remind yourself how being assertive is good for you and others. One of the best ways to deal with any lingering issues you have with being more assertive or drawing your line in the sand is to remind yourself why being assertive is not just good for you, but is good for others too. This can also be a good way to deal with feelings like guilt that can get in the way of being more assertive. If you need a refresher about why being assertive is good for you and others, check out the last 2 talks. Tip number 6. Don't let guilt affect your decision. One of the biggest factors that stops people from being more assertive is guilt. More often than not, people don't say no, don't assert their own priorities and needs, or define their personal boundaries because they feel guilty. There can be many reasons why this guilt crops up, but the point is that letting guilt affect your decision to be assertive will only cause problems down the line. It is better to be upfront and honest about things, as not only will things get clearer this way, there won't even be any issues with you feeling frustrated or resentful later on. Being clear and honest is always the better way. Just realize that being assertive is not the same as not being there for others. That's not the case at all. You certainly can be there for others, but when you do it assertively and define your own needs and limits and priorities, it empowers you to be there for others without having to sabotage your own happiness. It doesn't have to be an either-or situation. You don't have to forego your own happiness for the sake of others. You can be happy and you can be there for others. Looking after yourself at the end of the day is just as important as looking after others, if not more. Tip number 7. Pump yourself up. If guilt or some other worry gets in the way of you being more assertive, positive self-talk can be a great way to boost your self-confidence level, which in turn will help you to be more assertive. Being assertive can be stressful at times, especially if the situation is sensitive, and giving yourself a mental boost by using things like positive self-talk or by being your own cheerleader can really help in a scenario like that. Tip number 8. Take an assertive stance. Positive self-talk is not the only way to give yourself a boost. Your posture can also be extremely helpful. Research has shown that our body language is a huge part of our communication, over 90% in fact. And research has also shown that our physiology, which means the way we move or the way we stand or sit, also has a big impact on how we feel. So doing things like standing up straight with your shoulders back can help you feel stronger and more confident, and in turn help you to be more assertive. Tip number 9. Maintain a steady eye contact. Maintaining a strong, steady eye contact is an important way for delivering your message assertively. If your eye contact is fleeting or nervous, or if there is barely any eye contact, it can be hard to come across as assertive. If you aren't convinced about the importance of eye contact, just think about a time when you spoke with someone or saw someone whose eye contact was fleeting or nervous. That did not make a good impression on you, did it? Weak eye contact communicates a weak message and lack of confidence, whereas maintaining a steady and strong eye contact can help you drive your assertive message home and do so effectively. Strong eye contact is one of the best ways for people to know that you mean business. Tip number 10. Keep a level voice. In my last talk, I discussed quite a bit about how being assertive is not the same thing as being aggressive, as well as how assertiveness is not about raising your voice or being rude, along with a few other tips on being assertive. At the end of the day, what you say is just as important as how you say it, if not more. What you say is just as important as how you say it. The way you say something has a significant impact on how it is interpreted by others. This is why keeping your voice level and neutral is important for being assertive. Keeping your voice level and calm helps you to stay calm, helps you to put across your message effectively and assertively, and can also go a long way in avoiding conflicts, confrontations, and misunderstandings. Tip number 11. Don't play the blame game. Yet another way to avoid conflicts and misunderstandings when you're being assertive is to be objective. When you're frustrated about something, for example, it is easy, very easy, to fall into the trap of playing the blame game and blame others for things that frustrate you. However, that is never a good idea. Blaming others is not the same as being assertive, and all it does is make things worse rather than better. If you want to be assertive effectively, avoid playing the blame game and work on being as objective as possible. Tip number 12. Use I statements. As you learned earlier, being objective is very important if you want to be assertive effectively. However, that isn't always easy to do, especially if the situation is something that really bothers you or if it's a really sensitive situation. A communication strategy that can help you to be objective, especially during times when your emotions are all over the place, is to use I statements. For example, rather than saying something like, "you're always late" or "you're terrible at managing your time," you can say something like, "I feel frustrated when you're late for things." Ultimately, the point of being assertive is not to blame others, but rather to stand up for yourself and make your feelings, needs, and wants clear for the people concerned. Using I statements will not only help you avoid conflict, it will also go a long way in effectively defining your feelings, needs, and wants, and do so objectively. Tip number 13 is to breathe. Okay, this is an important one. Taking a deep breath is one of the easiest and fastest ways to level out your emotions, especially if you're feeling really agitated or frustrated. Here's the thing, when your emotions are all over the place, it's easy to say things you don't mean. An agitated state of mind can also make it harder for you to effectively stand up for yourself without being rude. Take a moment to breathe and think before you act, as this will be a great way to be assertive more effectively. This can also help you from burning bridges or saying and doing things that you might regret later. So, breathe. Tip number 14. Meditate. Breathing is a great way to ground yourself in a short space of time, but an even better and more effective way to keep your emotions and feelings from going haywire is to meditate regularly. A meditation practice helps you to have better awareness of what's going on inside you and helps you deal with any sort of emotional turmoil. The more you meditate, the better you will get at managing your emotions and keeping a level head. Tip number 15 is to start small. Look, if you're not used to being assertive or speaking up for yourself, the prospect of being assertive can be quite nerve-wracking. And that's okay. It is okay to feel nervous about speaking up. That's a common social conditioning, and most people are used to not standing up for or speaking up for themselves. You don't have to dive in head first though. To make it easy for you to be assertive, try starting small. You can start with small things and then build on your assertiveness rather than being assertive about big issues right off the bat. If you're comfortable going for a home run, by all means go for it. Go for the major issues. But if the prospect of being assertive makes you very nervous, start small and then work up to the big things. There you have it. 15 tips and strategies that can help you to be more assertive and make the process easier for you. Let's do a quick summary of the 15 tips and strategies to refresh your memory. So here are the 15 tips. Number 1, understand and be clear about your boundaries. Number 2, write down why you need to be assertive about the matter at hand. Number 3, Plan your response ahead of time. Number 4, rehearse with someone or in front of a mirror if you don't have someone. Number 5, remind yourself how being assertive is good for you and others. Number 6, don't let guilt affect your decision. Number 7, pump yourself up. Number 8, take an assertive stance. Number 9, maintain steady eye contact. Number 10, keep a level voice. Number 11, don't play the blame game. Number 12, use I statements. Number 13, breathe. Number 14, meditate. And number 15, start small. These tips and strategies will help you become more assertive, even if you're not used to being assertive at all. As for becoming more assertive, here is the most important thing to remember. It will not happen overnight, especially if you're not used to speaking up or standing up for yourself. It is something that you can get better at. And that's the good news. It doesn't matter if you're not used to it. Even if you have never spoken up for yourself in the past, you can learn how to do it. You can get better at it. The more you practice assertive behaviors, the better you will get at it. It is something that you can get better at, even if the thought of being assertive makes you break into cold sweat. Absolutely anyone can learn to be more assertive. It doesn't matter who you are or how used to not being assertive you are. You can learn to get better at standing up for yourself. The tips and strategies I went over in this talk, as well as the ones I went over in my last 2 talks, will not only go a long way in laying the foundation for you, they will also make it easier for you to get started on being more assertive. Don't be afraid of drawing your line in the sand and standing up for yourself, especially if something can negatively impact your life.